Like if we can make it not happen, we want to make it not happen. And when you do that, like kind of at a high level, avoid the digest loop. And you're like, well, how do I fetch and avoid the digest loop? Like, what's the things? Where's the magic switch to make the digest loop not happen? And so I wanted to talk about these things called watchers and kind of how they play into your code, and so that we can understand that everything we do in Angularville creates a watcher. Okay. So like this value right here, this value is actually in my scope. So if we come over to my code and we go to the start controller, so yeah, this value, this value comes from my controller. It's actually sitting in my controller. I just templated it in right here. And so when we do this, this creates a binding between my scope and my DOM, right? So if my DOM somehow changed that, my model would update, right? And if my model changed it, the DOM would react, like it would push it to the DOM, right? So we're going to talk about what makes that happen. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and inspect this. And here we go. So let's go ahead and inspect this thing right here. Does everyone here use battering? Yeah? Does anyone here not know what battering is? Okay. So battering, one of the guys on the Angular team, his name is Brian Ford. He built a browser extension when he was an intern. And the browser extension was to make troubleshooting and debugging Angular apps easier. Okay? So if you go to the Chrome Dev Store and you search for battering, so it's actually a mashup of the word like the Batman boomerang and Angular. It's battering. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, you can come to the Chrome Web Store and you can just install it. There's a video explaining what it does and how to use it. It's pretty awesome. Anyway, Brian, now he's like a full-fledged member of the team, but when he was interning, this was his project, and it's a pretty awesome project. We're going to show it off tonight. So anyway, when you have that installed and you inspect the value over here on the DOM, battering is going to put a scope variable on the global for you, and that scope represents the scope for the thing I just inspected. So I get all these things over here. This is my scope, and you guys will recognize that string from my scope that I just showed you guys. So we have this thing on my scope. Is that too small? Can you guys see it? Do I need to make it bigger? So on our scope, we say, if we say $$ watchers, we get this array of things called watchers. Okay, and these watchers are what make sure that you get your two-way stuff bound. So when we look at this watcher, right now we only have one watcher. It represents this binding that we made. Okay, and when we look at it, this is what it looks like. So it stores the last value. So the last time that Angular came through and checked the value of this variable, the value was this value comes from the controller. Now I haven't updated it, so like it's still the same as it was last time, right? So when Angular comes in here to do a check on all the things that are bound, they're going to go onto my scope, they're going to grab all the watchers, and they're going to say, what was the value of it last time, and what is the current value of it? Okay? And it's going to say, cool, they're still the same value. So I'm going to skip this and go on to the next watcher. Okay? And when you do this for every single scope in your entire app, that's what's called the digest cycle. Okay? So digest cycle says, hey, scope, and it talks to the very highest scope in your app. It starts at the very top of that tree. That's called the root scope. And it starts up there and says, hey, root scope, I want to crawl down all the different branches through the tree, find all your children's scope, and I want to check all their watchers and see if any of their watchers have changed. And I want to make sure that the last value matches the current value. And if they haven't, I'm going to start marking things as dirty, and I'm going to start updating changes. And when I update this one over here, it's going to update that one over there. And when I update that one over here, it's going to freak this one out again. And so it's going to have to, it sits there and it redigests everything like 500,000 times, right? No, it will only go 10 times. It will die after 10, but it doesn't. It feels like 500,000 times when you're waiting for your page to load, right? Or like when you click on that button and nothing happens for a second. It feels like you've been there for a year. So, but this is essentially what's going on in Angular. These little watchers, okay? And we're the ones creating these bloody things. So we're like, dude, I love Angular so much, but the thing that we love the most about it is also our biggest problem when it comes down to getting performance back into our apps. So anyway, this is a watcher. If it finds that it's changed, it's attached this function to it, and this function is what it will run to rebind the values from the model to the DOM, like just to make sure everything's in sync again. Okay, so that's kind of how this watcher is. It's kind of self-contained when it needs to do its update. So that's what a watcher is. So I'm going to move on. Okay, so yeah, again, the digest cycle, it takes all these watchers, and again, you just saw they're just small objects, and it checks them out and makes sure that their values are in sync. And again, if you haven't used battering, go through the tutorial. It'll change the way that you write Angular code, I promise. So there's one thing I didn't show off in Angular, or in battering. So you can come over to this AngularJS section in your DevTools, and you can tell, you have to say enable battering, okay? And then there's this performance tab. And this performance tab is going to tell you exactly, it's going to talk to you about the exact same thing that we're talking about tonight. It's going to say, hey, this right here is all of your watchers. Okay, so you can see all the watchers you've got set up in your app. So my app's pretty small. I've only got just a handful of them so far. Most of them exist on the menu, so when you look at this scope right here, this is all for the menu. I have 3 menu options, and they each have a path and a name, and they have a thing to see if they're the selected option or not. That's setting a class on them. So if they're the selected option, then they'll get the active class. So anyway, so these ones are from my menu, and then this one, you guys recognize this one down here. This is the variable that we templated into the ng view again. So you can kind of like see what's going on in my app based on this. Now, how many people have probably more than like 12 watchers in their app? Like everybody in the room, right? And so, like, even if you get it to print your name, you probably have more than 11. Like, it starts to go up pretty bloody quick. And we're going to show it off a little bit, and we're going to talk about ways that we can shake our, like, everything we were trying to do for the first year or two of using all the Angular we could. I'm going to talk to you about shaking some of that off and reducing the number of watches that you have. Okay. So another thing in battering is if you come down here on this performance tab, if you come to the bottom, it shows you all of your watch expressions. Okay, so you're like, okay, this one watch right here, it took up 60% of my digest cycle. That one watch. So luckily for us, that 60% represents less than 1 millisecond. So if all of our digest cycles only took 1 millisecond, you're doing something right. Like seriously, go to Vegas, because digest cycles take usually like a lot longer than that. And this tool right here lets you kind of see like your biggest offenders. If you come over here, you drag the slider, you say, hey, just show me the worst ones, because we probably all have thousands. So when you drag this slider like right here, it's going to kind of narrow it down to just the biggest offenders in your app, and you're going to be able to pay some attention to them. Okay, and it makes it a lot easier for us to narrow in on what are the problems that we're having with performance. How come when I click this button, it takes so long? The problem might not be like in your button. It might be somewhere else that's like totally destroying your digest cycle. And this is the panel where you come to check that stuff out. So use your battering, I guess, is that my next point. Okay. So I wanted to show you guys. So I wanted to show you guys another tool. Hold on. Did I skip a slide? Yeah. So I wanted to show you guys another tool besides battering. Okay. And it's called, oh, duh, sorry. It's called NG Stats. Okay? If you come out online, my friend Viper Bailey wrote it. You look for it. My friend Kent, he took what Viper wrote and kind of packaged it into a directive. But it was written by Viper. He's a really cool guy. Anyway, if you load this script into your page, you get this new global method called show Angular Stats. Okay, and it does this cool thing where it puts this canvas up. Can you guys see this? Does it project? Okay, good. So it puts this canvas up in the top left of your screen with the directive. You can change its location, and it's going to sit here. And anytime there's a digest, it's going to put this gray line here. And if your digest was super slow, it's going to show you how long it took. Okay. And it's also going to show you how many watches you have in your application. Okay, so at any time this thing is going to help you see on your page how many watches are on this view, because this view is really slow and the last view was just fine. So what's the deal with this view? And if you turn this on, maybe you're like, wow, I have 3,000 watches on this page. Like, what are we doing? How can I back off some of these watches? So NG Stats is another good tool. So I'm going to go ahead and I want to template something in here, and I want to have you guys see how it makes that number change. Okay, everyone, we're good. Okay. So where did I say we're going to do that? We're going to be done here. Okay, we're going to add it here. Okay. So so let's just template in a value. Let's go to my scope. And give me some random string to say, just so you guys believe that this is a real demo. This is a wicked, because we're in Boston, demo. Wicked smart demo. How do I smell smart? I don't know. Smart, right? That's what it sounds like to me. Smart? Okay. All right. It's not S-H-M-A-I, right? Okay, cool. I got it. We're leaving it here. Okay. So come back over to the DOM, and it's not here. No, I don't know why it's not here. I should tell it to be here. New val. Oh, I did my val, didn't I? Sorry. Okay. All right. So here we go. We got there. Let's turn the show Angular stat. Actually, I think I short circuited it here. So I'm going to say. Okay, yeah. So we just added one thing, one little binding to the DOM. All we did was bind this guy in. What happened? How many watches we get? Why do we get 3 friggin' new watchers for one bind? That kind of sucks. Everyone's like, wah, wah, wah. Like, why did that happen, right? Anyway, so sometimes it's going to bind up more things than you think it's going to. However, if you come over to your scope, and just for gigs, you say scope.foo is equal to 1, 2, 3. Scope.bar is equal to and so is this going to add new watchers? Anyone have a guess? New watchers? Okay, we got some people saying this. So it didn't add any new watchers. So that's good, right? So we can put stuff on the scope and it doesn't necessarily add a watcher for it. Okay? It's only going to watch things that we either say scope.watch or that we actually bind over in our view. We're going to get watchers on those things. Okay? So you don't have to shy away from doing really irresponsible, like just putting all your variables right in the scope, which I don't think you should do. But that's not what this talk is about, right? This talk is saying you can still do that and it won't hurt your performance. Even though it might. I'm not going to talk about that in this talk. Anyway, so you can put more stuff. It doesn't add more watches for putting stuff on the scope. So let's go ahead and do an ng repeat just to kind of get that. We're going to say scope.nums is equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Okay, so I'm putting 5 numbers on the DOM. Let's go ahead and wire it up. You guys see the code, all right? Is it big enough? Okay. Good. So we're going to come over here. We're going to say, sorry, span ng num in nums num. How many watchers did I just add? Who want to guess? I'm trying to get you in the habit of like looking at your code and going, fetch, that's n watchers. How many watchers did I just add? 15. Who said 15? Good guess. Okay. So we added. We're going to put 3 numbers in. Like we're going to put 5 spans in, right? And on each span, it's going to have a binding for the number. So we got 5. What else do we have a bound on? What else is bound? Nums is bound through the ng repeat. Okay, so you're going to say 6. Is that your guess? Who's guessing 6? Okay, it's a good guess. That's what I would have guessed. I'm not going to guess that though. So we were at 15, and we just went to 23. So how many is that? 8. So we got 8, which is exactly what you said. That makes perfect sense, right? That's exactly how many it should have added, right? Yeah, I don't know. Don't ask me. I'm just pointing out the reality. Yeah, no, I'm just saying this is the human condition, and this is how Angular affects it. So we're just going to deal with it and move on. It's better to know, right? It's better than not know it. Okay, so this is what's happening in your code. You're getting this kind of watchers. So eventually, we're going through our day, and we're like, dude, I'm ng showing here and hiding here, and I got 15 ng classes on the same element, right? And I've got an ng repeat with like a filter that pipes to another filter that pipes to another filter. I got like triple filter on my ng repeat, and inside of that, guess what I have? A directive that has an ng repeat inside of it, right? And we're also like, oh my gosh, like hundreds of these freaking watchers on this page. Like, how did that even happen? I started developing 5 minutes ago, and so it can get unwieldy if you're not being careful. And so that's the goal of this talk, is to say a watcher is awesome, but it's also like it's bad as it is good, and we're the ones causing them. So be freaking careful, okay? Again, I wanted to remind everyone, adding scope variables isn't going to increase your number of watches, so don't worry about that. And then I'm going to put, this is tweet bait, okay? So feel free to tweet this. If you have a watcher that takes more than 0 milliseconds, don't put it in a repeat. It's not going to scale, okay? So your goal as Angular developers is that all your watchers take 0 milliseconds, okay? Is that cool? My man just raised his eyebrows. You're probably not going to be able to do it, but that's your goal, okay? Like, some things take time, and yeah. Per watcher. Yeah, and remember I showed you the battering where you can see per watcher how much time it's taken. So you should be able to filter off like the most expensive ones, and it's on a part of the app that no one hardly ever uses, so let's refactor that guy and figure out what we can do to have him quit screwing up the rest of the page, right? So yeah, we have those tools to get the performance back. They're pointing their fingers at the thing, like the bad spots. It's just our turn to, like, we're now in the next phase of Angular development. We can stop being the best Angular citizen and using all the Angular things, and we can start looking at their tools and back off of some of their stuff a little bit, okay? And I'm going to point out some things we can do. So yeah, we'll talk more about this watcher stuff later. So does anyone have any question on the watchers specifically? I don't know if I'll have the answer, but if I do, I will give it.
Can you see where they came from?
Can you see where they came from? That's a good question. That's a great question. But then I took that one back out, right? So it went back down to 15. And so it added 8. Because that would have been even weirder, because I had 6 things and it only had 5 watchers. Like, let's just give up and like go home, right? I don't know. I would quit at that point because I would have no idea. Like honestly, I kind of feel better knowing that it's more than less, because less like doesn't make any sense at all, right? Yeah, it's like the particle of God Watcher. Like it's not even really there, right? All right, so we're gonna. So wait, you asked a question. Can I tell by using the tool where they came from? That's what you asked, right? So I'm gonna open this back up again, and we'll look at it. Dude, my Chrome tools is being bloody son of a. Come on. Can't click on it. There we go. Okay. So go to the Performance tab. It's going to get it here. Okay. So here's all of our stuff, and here's our expressions, right? So here's this. This is the exact expression it's watching. So you could like Command C that action. You come over to your dev tool or to your code, paste that in there. What the fetch? Not ready to expression. And it's like, dude, you're right here, so I know exactly where it is. It's right there. It's on the ng class. Okay. So that's exactly where that is. There are some of them that get a little wonky. So let me show it to you real quick. So let's say, where's that controller? That was a great question, by the way. So if you say scope.$watch, who's ever used scope.watch? Everybody, right? Okay. So have you ever watched a function? No? Okay. I'm going to say return scope.myvar. Right? Scope.myvar, you guys all see that up here. It's not changing. Okay? So I'm just making a dummy watch. Can we agree with that? It's always going to return the exact same value. Okay. And then the second parameter here is my watch function. Right? Okay. So let's go ahead and watch and go back over here. Refresh. Where is it at? So this kind of sucks, right? Because I don't know where a friggin' function is. There's probably 40,000 anonymous functions in my app. How could I know which anonymous function it was, right? Okay, so the way you can fix this is by saying, I'm going to name this anonymous functions. So this is the myvar watcher. I don't know. This is whatever name you arbitrarily want to give it. Okay, Captain America. Right, okay. So now when we come back over here, we scroll down and it actually shows me the name of the function. So a lot of us are doing things where it's watching an anonymous function, and you're going to come in here and you're like, I give up. I'm going to go home. If you name your anonymous functions, which you can do, and I learned this actually from Brian, they will appear in here like in a way that like you can actually read and go find it. Because otherwise, if I just told you it's function, it's watching function, you're like, all right, dude, I give up. This sucks, right? Because you don't know where that is. It could be in the Angular code itself, which wouldn't make any sense, but it could be. And when you search for function, there's thousands of them, right? Unless you're using CoffeeScript. But so yeah, so it's gonna be tough. So yeah, like name your anonymous functions, because sometimes this view right here can get a little wonky. It'll be like function, and you're like, I don't know. Let's stop. Let's just go back and write some more bad performant code. Okay. All right. Any other questions? Before we move on? Okay. Cool. That was a great question. I'm happy you asked that. Okay. So we got digest. I want the digest cycle because we hear about it. It's like the Kraken of Angular. Like it needs to happen, but like the least amount possible. Like, oh, that's gonna cause a digest. You're bad. And like, ooh, I didn't mean to. Like I passed it digest false. You know, like it shouldn't digest. So I want to talk about the digest and what it is. Okay. So it's the best and the worst part of Angular. Okay? It's the thing that we love the most. It's the thing that wowed us. And when we're doing performance, it's the thing that we're like, we gotta fetch and defeat that guy. Like, how do we get over that? Because we need it for the initial thing that made us fall in love with Angular, but we also got to stop it from killing us. So it's tough, right? It's basically, this is a digest cycle, okay? So it's like, I got to check everything, and then, like, I'm in a loop again, though. And it's going to check it again, and it changes this, which unsettles this section, and then it has to go settle that down, which unsettled over here. So it kind of does, like, this cyclical unsettling, okay? And it will do that up to 10 times. So when you look through your app and you're like, I got like 400 scopes in here, and you can see how many scopes you have on the page at any given time using this ng-stats, or if by using your battering. And so it's going to go through every single one of those and check all their watchers. That's what a dirty check is. Okay, and a dirty check is the digest cycle. It's going to go through and digest everything and make sure that everything's good, and it's going to let it settle back down. And when it's done, the digest is over. Okay, and if you're doing something horribly bad, it's going to immediately start another digest when you're done. Okay, it's going to be like, okay, I'm done, but you scrolled another pixel, so now I got to do it all over again because you wired up a freaking mouse move in Angular, right? ng mouse move. Every single pixel, right? So you kind of see what I'm saying? Anything you do in Angular is gonna go. I gotta digest this stuff now. I gotta apply whatever change that I just did. I gotta apply that through the scope. Awesome, right? Okay. So, but we're the ones doing this. Like, these are the things that we do that cause it to be slow. And I've kind of pointed out the ones that I think are the worst offenders. Okay. So if you cannot use these methods, like, figure out another way to not do it. Yeah, oh, dude, I just gave away my finale, man. All right, let's go back up. Where are we at? Where are we at, dude? I don't even know where we're at. Here? No. Are we here? I don't even know where it is, bro. It's gone. Did I skip that one? Where are we even at, man? I don't even know what page we're on now, man. I don't even know. I don't know where that was. Because I was looking and I didn't see it. Did I scroll too far? Oh, yeah, I skipped this stuff. I did talk about it. Okay, so I'm going to skip this because we're running out of time. So the rolling changes thing, you guys get that where it's going to check this, like you change the variable over here and it's like, okay, I got to go apply stuff for everything. Oh, that change caused this change. Okay, now I got to go reapply. I got to start over, reapply everything. Oh, that changing of the changing made the changing change. So I got to, like, it's going to try and resettle. It takes some time sometimes. So that's what I'm calling it, rolling changes, but that's the dirty check, okay? And that's why I threw this in there because, dude, my slides are broken because we're the ones causing that. That's us. So yeah, so really the real problem is this root scope digest, which is when it goes up to the very top scope, and what a digest is it takes a scope and it takes it and all of its children and digests them, like checks them to see if they're dirty. Okay, so the root scope though is like the top scope. It's the top. There's no more parent scopes than that one. That's like the main Angular scope. So when you call scope that applies, anyone ever called scope that apply? Yeah, we all have. Stack Overflow told you to do it, right? Yeah. So when you did that, you basically said, please, more digest cycles, and that's what's going to happen. So this is a scope apply says go to the very top one and start from there. That's what a scope digest is, or a root scope that digest. And these are some of the events we were talking about. This when my man messed me up. Now we're back to where we were, right? What? I'm not zooming in. I don't care. I'm gonna zoom out before I zoom in. All right, so mouse over, like you can imagine if like 15 things on the DOM have mouse over events, and I'm just trying to move my mouse, and it's like I'm digesting the whole bloody time. I don't care. I don't care if you got SVGs like animation going on. I'm gonna screw that all up, right? Mouse enter, mouse leave. If you had that on the same element, that's even worse, right? That's 2 instead of mouse over. Mouse enter and leave is like twice. That'd be even worse. Key press, like when you're typing, that would be bad. But we all have to like watch the key press to make sure we can like go request data from the server, right? Like that was one of the first friggin' demos we did. So why is key press bad? Well, we'll show you. Anyway, NG scroll is probably the worst because, you know, some of us love like a super jank scroll, like it scrolls 400 pixels at a time. There's like no in between. NG scroll is gonna every single pixel it scrolls is gonna be like, all right, let's go back to the root scope and start all over. And then you scrolled 1 more pixel. I'm gonna start back over again. So it's tough. And we have some clever things that we do to like try and defeat it and like trick it, like, oh, I didn't change anything, like, leave it on. But it's still causing a problem, and I'm going to kind of point that stuff out. So I did want to point out like the difference between a scope apply and a scope digest, though, okay? So so you can take any scope, like so you're just like you walked into the bar and there was like a scope there, and you can say scope.digest. And it will just start at wherever it is in the hierarchy. Maybe it's the root scope, but maybe it's like way down lower, right? And if you're way down lower and you say, hey, scope.digest, it's only going to digest from itself, right? Which sometimes you want, but sometimes you definitely don't want that to happen. So, like if you know for a fact it's isolated, you would call scope.digest instead of scope.apply. But if it would ever have any consequences outside of itself, you have to call scope apply until Angular to start the madness. So that's the difference between scope digest and scope apply. Scope digest kind of takes one scope, and scope apply is just like all the scopes go now, and it kind of takes off. So that's kind of the difference. Okay. All right. So I have some examples that we're going to look at real quick, and these are all things that we've all done. So no one I'm not finger wagging anyone. So half of you wrote these things like today before coming here, okay? Totally cool. It's not a bad thing. Seriously, probably one of the Angular guys taught you to do it. So it's not like horrible. I'm just trying to say there might be another way. That's all that's happening here. Okay. So one thing I wanted to point out was, so on the NG stats site, they have this really good example of a filter, okay? And so they have these things down here in this list, right? And let's put 40 things in the list. Has anyone here put 40 things in a list before with an ng repeat? Cake, right? Like lots of us. Okay. So it's gonna template them in here with a filter, okay? And then he's got a mouse over listener. And he just wants to show us, right here is going to tell us how long the scope digest took. So if we say, I want that filter to delay 0 milliseconds, my digest is wicked fast, right? Okay. So just look, by increasing it to 1 second, okay, or 1 millisecond, I want you to watch what happens to the digest. It's just that 1 millisecond, okay? I didn't even freaking mouse over anything. It's already at 80, okay? But yeah, so our goal is to be at 16 milliseconds per frame. So if our digest takes 58, we're never going to have 60 frames per second on our website, right? We're going to have like, what's that? I don't know, a third of that? 20 frames per second? Like really bad. So, so yeah, like if you have a filter that's taking more than 1 millisecond, it's like it's time to rethink life, right? Look in the mirror and be like, dude, why do you make your filters take more than 1 millisecond? Your parents didn't teach you to do this. Anyway, so yeah, and if you're going 2 or 3 seconds, I mean, just throw your app away. It's time to do the rewrite because you're at 160 milliseconds. So yeah, it's bad. So your filters have to be crisp, okay? And I just wanted to show that because I thought that was an excellent demo that they put out there on their NG stats site. Okay. Okay, we're going back to their demo. Okay, here we are. All right, so a lot of us, we have this like ingenious idea that when we do a mouse move, maybe we put this on the body. I put it on a div. Let's say this div is really big, like 1,000 pixels wide and 1,000 pixels high. Anytime the mouse moves inside of it, it's going to call this do mouse move event, right? But I'm way smarter than I was when I started Angular. So I do this debounce method. Has anyone ever used a low-dash debounce, right? Or a low-dash throttle? It's different than debounce, but kind of the same idea. Yeah, so that's a good thing to do. So instead of saying, if I move a pixel every millisecond, that's, that's 1,000 milliseconds per second. So I don't want you to digest 1,000 times per second. That'd be really bad. So I'm going to have you just like throttle that handler to 200 milliseconds. Okay. So that's what we're saying. Okay. But that's what you think is happening is not happening. So you're thinking that it's not going to run this method. It's only going to run that once every 200 milliseconds. And you were right. It is only going to do that method once every 200 milliseconds. Okay. But it's still going to call this method every bloody pixel move, and that's going to cause a what? A digest. Even though it's going to call this method and nothing's going to happen because Lodash is like, it's been less than 200 milliseconds, I give up, I'm not going to do anything. It still called it, which says I'm still going to make sure that everything is good. Okay? So even though you're really clever and you tried to beat the digest cycle, you failed. Right? You only save performance on your server. You didn't save any performance on your client, is all I'm trying to point out. Okay? So I wanted to give you a different idea. And I know I'm suggesting that you do something outside of Angular. And that's part of my whole talk, is to kind of... Can you guys see this? Is it too small? I'm going to go bigger. Is that better? A little bit bigger? Dude in the back with glasses. You good? 2 dudes in the back with glasses, so we're good. So we're good. Good? Okay. All right. So instead, I made this new, instead of ng mouse over, I made my test controller move handler. Okay? So I made my own. And this is a directive of my own design. And what it does is it wires up a jQuery handler. Okay? And my jQuery handler, he can implement that same debounce method. But because it's in jQuery, not in Angular, it can fire once per pixel, and that's just a jQuery event that it doesn't even know what a scope or a digest is. Okay, so it's not going to cause your Angular to like freak out and to have that mass unsettling. It's just going to be like, hey, I'm just over here checking stuff once a pixel, and then when something happens, when something's true, then it can say, hey, scope, I want you to eval that method that they templated into you. So it'll go through, it will take this do mouse movement event, and it'll eval it, which will then do what? Mass unsettling, right? So that's how you could. This is a suggestion. You can do this, and you should do this if you care about performance. Again, you don't have to. I'm just saying it's a thing how you can make the digest slow down in your app. Okay. All right. Watches. Who watches? Who's ever done a watch like this? Scope.watch item, and then if it's not undefined, do something really cool with that item. Have we all done that? Like, we've all done that, right? So a lot of times we watch the item, but we just really needed it like one time. We didn't need like an infinite watch. Is that true? Like, we all know it's true. So in your watches, when you do this scope.watch, it actually returns to you the unwatch function. Okay? So it gives you back the thing you need to say, stop watching that. So keep it, and when you get that one event, like that one circumstance where it's like, yeah, this is what I was waiting for, unwatch at that point, okay? So unwatch your stuff. Suggestion. Okay. ng show and ng hide. Okay. Now this UI right here, this is hold on, I'm gonna turn show Angular stats off. So this is the one where we're like, we all get in trouble, right? Because we all learn to do this. So I'm on some form somewhere, okay? Can you guys just imagine this with me? Right? This is a real form in a real app, not just a demo. And if I'm in archive mode, show this button, show this icon, the archive icon. But if I'm not, if I'm in archive mode, hide this one. So basically, if I'm in archive mode or not, it will show a different icon. Does that sound like something you would do? Okay. So if I'm in archive mode, hide this text area, so don't let me edit it. Okay. Just show me the description, but show it to me in a span. Don't let me edit it. But if I'm not in archive mode, give me like the text area. Let me type like new things and let me modify the content. Okay. That seems like something you would do, right? Like everyone's like, yeah, I did this today before I came to this thing. What's the matter with this? And then down here we're like, okay, well, if you're in archive mode, show the unarchive button, and otherwise show the save button, like because I edited it, right? This looks like a UI. Like you guys can all imagine what this looks like, right? Half you use Bootstrap, so our UIs all look the exact same, right? Anyway, so yeah, this looks like a thing that we were told by the Angular team to build, right? Like they said, go use ng-show, use it responsibly, and return a report later. So anyway, I'm saying that there's a better way to do it than this, and I'm going to give you two alternatives, okay? This is the way that I was like, when I thought I had graduated, I was like, this is how you do it. So I made class-based hiding, right? So I made a class called show when archive mode and hide when archive mode. And then down in here, on my whole form, I just put archive mode on the form, right? And then I just decorated it with classes, the things I wanted to show or hide. So I'm getting the same effect as ng shows and ng hides, except with one watch on that class. Sorry. It's my wife and kids calling me. Should I answer? Answer. What's up? Hey. Yeah, I'm in the middle of a presentation. Everyone's listening. Do you want to say anything? She said no. She says hi. Yeah. I'll call you back. All right. Okay. All right. So I took all those ng shows and hides, and each one of those created a what? A watcher, and I replaced them with how many? Which is the one. Does that seem like a better thing to do, right? Better or worse? I think we're going in the right direction. Can anyone see any problems in my plan? Like, where can I make it better? What's still not good? Anyone? Cengage guys. You were at Cengage, right? Okay, yeah. He wasn't in that talk, but he is Cengage. What's up, man? What do you think? Yeah, what's up? Yeah, I'm still loading it, right? So like this, like when it is in archive mode, it's hiding this, so it's not going to show. My class has made sure that it's hidden, true? But it's still like, hey, wire this model up, like bind that to the controller. Let's get some watcher going. Over here, hey, like I know that you're not like we're in archive mode, so this save button's hidden, but it's still got the watcher going on the save button. Even though it's hidden, like it's like, hey, let's watch this up. Let's make sure we watch it. So you still got a couple extra watchers. Okay. So I have another way that I think that we could do it that might be better. Okay. So I'm going to say it's a bit classier. I don't know why I said that. That was the last one. I didn't change the description. I didn't get a good tagline on this one. That's like a presentation fail. Literally, I feel like I just failed at presenting this because I didn't get a good tagline for this one thing. All right. Even classier? It's way less classy, though.
It's wicked classy.
It's wicked smart, dude. I don't want to put it. People in like Mexico City are like, wicked smart. No complaints. Like, dude, it's a Boston thing. Don't worry about it. Okay. So I'm going to say this. Do this. ng if. Okay? So I want you to imagine archive mode is true. Okay? If archive mode is true, I'm going to count the number of watchers you got. You got this watcher for this ng if. You got this watcher. Okay? You got this watcher right here. So how many am I up to? 3? I'm up to 3? 4 right there. That's all you're at. So you're at 4 watchers. Okay? You agree? If you come back to this way, I want you to imagine archive mode is true. Okay? If archive mode is true, I've got this watcher. I've got this watcher, so I'm up to 2. I've got 3. I've got 4, and I got 5. Okay, so I'm at 5 watchers. So I'm a little bit more performant. The reason I know I'm like only 1 less, but forms are often way bigger than like this simple form I've got for this demo, right? And I'm going to make an argument that a lot of these little optimizations eventually turn into massive optimizations over time. So if every UI we look at, we approach as least amount of watchers possible, after like 12 months, our app should be in pretty good condition. Like we didn't have like any wasted watchers along the way. We should be good. So I'm going to argue that a lot of micro optimizations make for like long-term optimizations. Yeah.
The watchers inside the NGF, they get created even though the NGF isn't true.
So this one down here. So if I'm in archive mode, it doesn't even put this in the DOM.
Right.
Yeah, so that's not even there. So yeah, there's no watch on it. The only thing that gets watched is the if. Okay? So yeah. Any other questions? I'm going to go here and I'll go there.
How slow is it to switch?
That's a good question. You should test it out in your app. Like, I don't know what your app looks like. So it's hard for me to be like, dude, definitely use the NGF because I don't know. Because, like, maybe your if is like build the Coliseum on the if. That would be pretty slow, right? So you might not want to do that one. You might want to, like, preload that thing in the background. So maybe the NG, like, the other one's better where you're hiding it with classes and letting it paint, like, during the load session. Where you can put a spinner, right? But maybe it's not. Maybe it's more performant to do the ngIf if it's like a lot less. Like, just test it out, and you can go over to you have the tools to be like, I wonder what's faster if I look at this over here. So just test it out. You know what I'm saying? See that eye, bro? Okay, yeah. NG else?
Yeah.
I'm sure there's like someone in the community that did that.
That would reduce the 2 ifs to 1 watcher.
I think 2 ifs is the same as an if else. To be honest. Yeah. I think it's the same. Yeah. Yeah.
So I was wondering if there's an easy way to get NGF to stop watching after the first check. Because a lot of like, this is a good example of a case where you probably don't care.
Yeah.
Isn't there an NG switch that you can use instead? Put it on the right element?
Switch? You can use a switch if you want to. I'm not going to use NG switch. I don't think it's very performant. But you can use it. I don't think it's very performant. But again, like you have the tool, test it out. Like, be like, hey, NGF, maybe try the switch. Maybe it's faster. I don't know. Okay. I'm going to keep going down because something that you said is later on. Can we get there? Okay, cool. All right. So inline expressions. So a lot of us are like, hey, that's not Boston. That's New York, right? I still felt. Hey, right? That's Jon Stewart. Anyway, okay. A lot of times we're like, hey, just put this span and like put the person's name in it. And like the person's name's not gonna change like randomly. Is that true? So really, we kind of just need Angular to stop being a watcher and just be handlebars for a second, please. Like stop doing the thing and just be handlebar. Just template it and then like back off. Does anyone like agree that like, a lot of the stuff we need like on the form, the labels, maybe we're localizing those to like some other language. But just localize it one time and don't watch it. Like I'm not going to change the translation on the fly, right? So in pre-Angular 1.3, there's a library out on the internet called bind once. Does anyone use this? My man, I use it too. Back there, you use it as well? Yeah. So I use it. So on a certain page in the past. We looked at it. We had like 1,800 watchers, which sounds like a lot because it's a lot. And we were like, hey, what if we could do to get that down? What can we do to make this page a little better? So we busted out this bind once. So I'm going to show it to you. It's over on the GitHub. And it's got all like the same directives that you're used to. It's got bind once if conditions, which you just asked. It's got bind once switch, bind once show and hide. Because like the archive mode is not going to randomly switch to the other mode, right? Like I really just kind of need to template it the one way and then give up, right? You can do bind once hrefs. You can do bind once sources on image, bind once classes, bind once alt text, titles, IDs, styles. Pretty awesome. It's pretty lightweight. It wasn't heavy. So I definitely stuck in 1.2 land, which, let's face it, a lot of us are, or 1.1 land. This is a thing you might look at. Okay? So yeah. And then what you end up with is it just, like on this thing, as long as when initially rendered, as long as first name wasn't null, you're good to go, right? So scoped.person.first name was there, it's going to put it on, and then you're done. It's not going to watch it anymore. So we replaced a lot of our stuff with these bind once thing. We went from 1,800 watchers down to like 400 watchers. So that sounds like a big reduction because it's a really big reduction. And you could see it as you were scrolling around and stuff. Like it was visually like crisp. So bind once was a huge one. In Angular 1.3, we have something else where I'm going to scroll this up a little bit. So if like let's say you have you call page.refresh. No, I don't know. It might. Like I haven't done a lot with 1.3 because, like a lot of everyone else, I'm stuck in 1.2. So, like for my day job, I don't have like all the hot details on 1.3. However, I will say on Egghead.io, they have like a whole series on 1.3 stuff. So if you're like, hey, what's new in 1.3? What should I care about? Go check it out. It's got some cool stuff.
And,
yeah.
Kent actually has a way of easy way of refreshing your directive.
Yeah.
You bind once, but then refresh the entire directive whenever you want.
Yeah. So Kent C. Dodds is what he's talking about. Kent made it so you can use bind once, but also force it to do a refresh. But you got to go in with your eyes wide open because you need to know how to do it. Like it's not a thing you can skip for free. Like you have to force it an update. So good point. Okay, Angular 1.3. So if we had scope.name and in Angular 1.3 we wanted to like watch the name because the name might randomly refresh, we just do what we've always done. But if we wanted to just do a one-time templating, 1.3's got this : name, and then it's going to go paint it once and then stop. Like no more updates. Now someone's going to say, can I update it? Can I force the update? I don't know. Like you got to go play with it. So yeah, so that's 1.3, which most of us don't get to play with. I got home or for this presentation. So yeah. I have one more example that I didn't get to finish building up. I was trying to in the airport on my way here. I was literally like, I should finish this example because it's gonna fail if I don't get to show it to them. But I'm gonna kind of talk you through something I had to do that was pretty elaborate. I can't show you like the live app because I have to make you all sign NDAs. But it looked something like this. Okay. It was a bunch of lists that I repeated over, right? And then inside the lists were a bunch of tasks that I repeated over, right? And then inside the tasks were a bunch of directives that showed people's faces, and then I repeated over those, okay? So I had like 3 repeats like inside each other, which is awesome. And the page absolutely loves it like this. So I limited it to 20 here so that it's not insane, but it like when you get like 50 of these in each list, it just gets insane. But we have 800 watchers on this page, just with a few of these tasks, which is kind of a lot. So what I was trying to do is I wanted to make it so that I could click on this one and drag it, and then drop it over into another column. Okay. So I got it to where I could in Angular I could click on it and it wouldn't like start the movement. It wouldn't take it out of the list until I actually moved the mouse. So yeah, that's good. So it'd remove it, and then it would like follow my mouse. And what I found was I had one of our favorite methods, one of my favorite Angular directives, ng mouse move, right? I was using that because like I'm epic Angular citizen, so I'm gonna use a mouse move, and I'm like moving. I'm like, like it's like way too many milliseconds behind it. Like I'm here and it's still over here finishing the last digest cycle, and then it like skips and catches up. I was like, okay, so maybe Angular's not ever going to be able to get me into this kind of a view with that kind of performance. And I tried. Trust me, I did. Like I spent like 2 weeks trying to cram it down Angular strut and big. You're going to freaking work, dude. And it didn't ever work. It was literally throwaway code. Okay, and I like polish it up and I'm like tighten it up and I'm like this sucks. Okay, but you have to polish it before you know if it sucks, right? Like you can't do like halfway there and like, oh, it still sucks, I should give up now. Like you got to go all the way to the end. So it's all throwaway code. So I wanted to explain, and I hope you guys are like super imaginative, so you can like imagine your way into what I did. Are you guys imaginative? Feeling wicked imaginative today? Okay, so this is what I did. I made a directive for every list, and that directive said, and I put it on the lists, and it said when this list appears in the DOM, call home, like send an event up to this parent scope with your element and your location up from the top XY of the window. Okay, so I knew where all the lists were located, right? And then I said, hey, on every task, I put that exact same thing for the task. I said, hey, task, when you paint, send this event with your element and with your offset XY from the top of the page, okay? So when the page is rendering, it's already going to be slow, so I was like, I'm just going to pay that price then because it's already going to be, I'm already paying a performance hit to load all this stuff in here. I'm going to put that there. Rather than pay that on the mouse move, I'm going to like front load that tax. So I did. So then when it comes time to move my mouse, I'm like, I'm going to wire that up in Angular, jQuery, because that doesn't seem like a good thing to do. ng mouse move is not going to work for me. So I'm like, I'm going to wire up the mouse move. When I click mouse down, ng mouse down, I'm going to wire up this mouse move thing in jQuery. Okay. So the mouse move in jQuery wasn't always there. I did it on ng mouse down. And on ng mouse up, what do you guys think I did? I took that jQuery listener off, right? Yeah, that's what I did. So now I've got this jQuery listener for my mouse moves when my mouse button is pressed down. Okay? And now when I move my mouse, it's like, because it's in jQuery, this little guy right here, he's able to like follow me really fast. Again, I didn't get this one working, but it was able to follow me super fast, okay? But the real hard part was, like right now, if I drop it, where's it going to go? It's broken, so it's not going to go anywhere. But where would you expect it to go when I like pick my mouse, like unclick? It's going to go back where it was? That's what you think it's going to do? But no one knows because there's no drop zone. Like I'm not saying, hey, dude, there's a drop zone right there. If you go up, it's going to go there. So the drop zone was the really hard part, was saying, where should I put, what is it closest to? And is it on the top half of that or the bottom half? Should I drop it above it or below it? That was the real thing. But once I had the XY of everything on the page, it's just math at that point. And distance calculations, be like, hey, here's my x1, x2, y1, y2, do the distance calculation. And you could do thousands of those in less than 1 millisecond. So I was able to find the closest area to me in less than a millisecond, and I was able to take the old drop zone off the page and put the new one on in less than 1 millisecond. Like when I timed it, it was 0 milliseconds. So I was able to now have this thing and I was like zipping my finger all over the page because my QA people are going to do that too, right? Like I'm never going to do that, and like I'm never going to like go to production like, does it work? Like, but the QA people are going to do that, right? So I was like, okay, and I was able to like, if I was moving over 12 in a second, the drop zone was following me on all 12 of them. So like I got it to really, really fast performance inside Angular, okay? And sometimes we need that. And I was so scared. Like I really learned a lot on that project because I was so scared to break out of Angular. I was like, I can't. Mishko is going to disown me. Like, I can't ever tell anyone about that I did it because they'll tell Mishko, and then it's over for me. So, but no. So what I'm trying to say now is, don't be scared to break out if you need the performance gain. Okay. So on your and stuff that are like, you can have a 50 millisecond delay, great, who cares? Don't freak out. But when you're trying to do something that's like fast, you're an Angular citizen, so you're going to fight it, but don't fight breaking out of Angular to do those kind of things. But I will say, keep them in directives. Don't put all that jQuery magic in a controller. Put that in a directive so your controller's, I'm going to say it once and I'm never going to say it, so your controller's still testable and it doesn't have any DOM manipulation inside your controller, okay? So yeah. Anyway, that's the talk on performance. That was supposed to last 30 minutes last night.
We're going to start. We're going to start passing out papers so that people can sign up for the lottery, so that for the AnguConf tickets. I also have some T-shirts that we give out as consolation prizes. Not as cool, but whatever. And then, if you wanted to take a quick break, because we had two other things we wanted to get to. Now this went long. we can take a vote.
Yeah, we can take a vote on what we talk about next, because we're only going to get one of them.
The ground rules for this is put your name and email address on it, and sharing the poll with a hat. Work Segate, or not eligible.
What were the two other topics?
The other topic was going to be rich data models, which we've had a couple of talks on, but Aaron has another take on it. And then Aaron wanted some time to talk about the Medium article by Daniel. What's his last name?
I don't care.
What's wrong with Angular?
Yeah.
He came out throwing punches, and he wanted to, explore that a little bit. So, who wants to do the rich data models? It has to be an abbreviated version, and we won't have time for that.
It's actually only like 30 minutes. The rich data model.
What you said about this one?
Wait, this one is.
Is?
Yeah, it is.
Right.
Yeah.
Who wants to just editorialize on what's wrong with AngularJS in our response? There's a lot of people involved.
Way more tweet bait in that discussion, though. Because I'll get unbridled. I'll get pissed.
Because, like, if there's other options, Aaron, it takes requests.
Yeah.
Seriously, can we try that again? Who wants to do the rich data models?
Okay. Who wants to do the debunking the stupid article for me this week? I don't know. You're gonna have to get a better voting system.
How about this, Aaron? What do you want to do?
I haven't really. The data models are cool. I haven't really got a chance to. I'd rather do data models. Because I'll come unglued if I talk about Daniel's article.
Well, maybe we can organize like a real thing to hang out. Or something.
We can hang out afterwards and just talk about Daniel's thing if anyone really wants to. Everyone who already knows. Yeah.
So while you're filling that out, just name and email address. The ground rules are you have to commit to going. You can't give it to someone else. If you can't go, then let me and Sharon know.
We'll fix the options, so if you can't go, you can sell it, you can give it.
Is this live?
Yeah.
Okay. This one is working. The ground rules for the drawing are if you can't go, please don't enter. If you win and then it turns out you can't go, let me and Sharon know as soon as you can. We'll pick like 3 or 4 names and we'll just move down the list. If we get to the 4th name and they can't go, then Sharon will go.
Or we'll just do another one.
But I will make sure that she doesn't just cross people off the list. NG 2015 is March
5th and 6th.
5th and 6th, 2015.
It's in Salt Lake City. Same place as last year.
That's in Utah.
It's in Utah, bro. You're welcome. In my basement. March 5th and 6th.
While the papers are still going around, I'm contractually obligated by my talent acquisition group to say thank you for coming to this meeting tonight. I'm Dick Williams. I'm with the we're hiring Angular developers. If you are code around, you can go to cengage.jobs on the web to find this code navigation. Sorry for the spam. And
they're the ones that pay for everything. They paid to bring Aaron out here, so it's just a round of applause.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting me.
yeah, I found
Yeah.
paper and I only brought one pen. All the pens that I had last time, some of them absconded. So anyone still need?
I just keep filling my name out.
I didn't think about that. The pre-event next time will be someone will write an Angular app to do a raffle draw. Or we can catch things like this. Bring it out. Yeah. I promise I'm going to throw these away afterwards and not.
How good's that? What do you think about that, bro? 1400 millisecond digest cycle. Every day, baby. So awesome. Yeah. Oh, how you doing?
How are you? You came to Boston.
Yeah, I made it.
You brought a good weather too.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, yeah. So how you doing? Salt Lake City?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm doing it now.
You are?
Yeah, very excited.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that's good. Very good. Yeah, we're gonna do all this. How many voices we got?
Yeah.
We actually
Do it once, twice, going.
Brand new.
Okay.
Very excited.
Yeah, you gotta keep a watch. You gotta keep an eye on the watchers, otherwise.
And we started on 2 right now. On 3, I'm hoping.
It's got a lot more performance enhancements.
Yeah.
I can't use it either, but I wish I could.
What do you think of Ember?
Ember?
Yeah.
Ember's dead.
You think so? Really?
So in Salt Lake City is like a mecca for JavaScript. Like, if you have a good JavaScript framework, if the guys in Salt Lake City like it, it will take off. Like, it's like the mecca. So we had an Ember user group, but once React came out, the guy who like headed up the Ember user group, he stopped heading it up and went to React. They canceled the Ember user group. It's now a React user group. Ember's dead. Plus the community leaders for Ember, like, you've met Igor?
Yeah. No,
He's like the nicest guy on the planet.
I know, you
He's
said.
never mean, but the guys on Ember are super good.
But they put so much work. Saying your food is such a smart.
He's smart, but he's not people smart.
Yeah.
He's book smart and he's good at JavaScript. He's not people smart.
So you're not joining him as well.
No.
Good to see
Yeah,
you.
good to see you.
Also a pleasure. I gotta run, so good talk. Cool, thanks, man. Better price out for your talks.
All right, we ready?
We ready? Has everybody who is able to enter given us their entry? Last chance. We got everybody? All right.
All right.
First one's it?
This is the very first ticket to NGConf 2015. Like, no one else has a ticket. Not even me. And I'm organizing it.
Aaron Vanderpool. Congratulations. Well, I'm going to let him get going. I have some t-shirts that we can. Do you want to do that now? Do that real quick? Yeah. All right. Hold this. I got my t-shirts. You can take your pick. There's like large and extra large. I got a couple of Angular, a couple of Google. I even have a Domo.
Domo. Domo.
So you can take your pick.
Domo's awesome, by the way.
All right. Kevin Osterlitz,
Kevin.
first pick.
Chip chop.
Sonny Gleason,
Hey.
Louis Wilbrink,
Louis. Louis.
This is for some steps.
Yeah. If the demo shit goes last, I'm not presenting. We're skipping this last part.
Nate Morse, they're all largest, and then that's Sean Scova. Is that right? Yeah, they're all largest, and then that's Eduardo Gutierrez.
Follow. Yeah.
Michael Satkovich.
Mike.
Christian Taylor. And that's it.
CT. All right. All right.
Now back to Aaron.
Let's go. Let's do this. I'm gonna hustle through this last part. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. All right. Let's go. Go fast on this. That last one was way too slow, right? All right. It's all right. Slow though. Okay, we're gonna go fast. If you can't keep up, I'm not doing questions till the end. So write them down. Okay. So I want you guys to look at this setup here, right? When I click on one of these to move them, there's like some logic that says, hey, hey controller, take this list and remove this task from it, right? Or when I drop it, it's like, hey list, hey controller, take this list and add this task to it in this order, like at this index, right? So there's a lot of logic, right? And all throughout our UIs, we're like, hey controller, do this thing, like take this object and like do a thing with them, right? And like in my UI, I was like lists and tasks, okay? And I need to organize them. So in our apps, we're like, okay, we put all this logic in our controller, and it's really kind of an anti-pattern where we're like, hey, controller, take these two things and do a thing with them. And some of us are like, dude, I don't do that because I'm awesome. So I put it in a service, right? Who here thought that when I said that? When I said put it in a controller, who here's like, I do it in a service? Yeah. So dude, I'm awesome. I'm better than that. I don't friggin'. Who puts it in the controller? You said, right? Like the controller's for scrubs. I do it in a service, right? I can inject that service anywhere, and I can reuse that code. You said that. Admit it. All right, he's not going to admit it. Okay, so I want to present a different idea where you say to the things, hey thing, like hey list, add this task to you, okay? Or hey list, take this task out of you, okay? So I'm going to present an idea where you have a new place to put logic, okay? And it's how your models relate to each other, okay? And I'm going to call them rich data models. If you guys want to call them something else, wait till you leave the room. We're going to call them rich data models here, okay? And all they are is plain old JavaScript objects, okay? And rather than say, hey service, here's a list, here's a task, put it in it, or here's a list, here's a task, take it out of it, or sort it or whatever, I'm going to say, hey list, put this task into you. And the list is going to say, got it. And then anywhere I use a task list, I don't have to like inject services or copy code for the rest of you who didn't raise your hand from the one controller to the other one that tells it how to do it, right? So we're just going to say the task is, hey task list, do this stuff. So I'm going to show you for this UI my two data models, okay? We good? Okay. All right. task.js. Okay. So I'm putting it on global because I'm lazy. And I didn't have time to wire this up with require, or like I was trying to dork around with Angular constants and they weren't working. So I gave up and I put on global. But you guys are super forgiving, so it's okay. So this is my task model, okay? So this is, I have this task function. You pass it data. So you have to call new task, right? Is everyone familiar with JavaScript classes? You make a function and you can say new that function, and it's like a class, okay? So I'm going to say, okay, if you called it without the new, then this is equal to the window, which means you're not the smartest knife in the door. So go ahead and I'm going to help you out and call new task for you and just pass it the data you gave me, okay? And then I'm going to take whatever task data it was, and I'm just going to put all that data onto this object, okay, onto me. So if you pass me a task and it had like a description and an ID and a created date and a list of people who it's assigned to, I'm just going to extend all that data right onto the task itself, okay? So for those who don't understand underscore.extend, it just takes all the properties from this data object and puts them onto this, okay? So it just puts it onto the object. Pretty simple. So that's my task object. The task doesn't really know about its list. Like it's kind of, at this point I could, and I have in production and stuff I've done, where I've told the task, hey, this is your list. Like I've given them circular references. Because sometimes I need to go to the task and say, hey, what list are you in? Because I don't know. And he's like, here's my list, and I go to the list and I can find stuff out about it. And it makes it faster than like always searching through an array of lists to find the list that corresponds to my task, right? So that's why I give them circular references. Anyway, this is my task object, okay? Now I'm going to show you the task list, because over here in my DOM, I've got these lists, right? And over here I gave them names, list 1, list 2, list 3, super inventive names that clearly represent the phase that they're in, right? So I'm going to show you this task list object, okay? Okay, so task list.js. Okay, so here's the task list. So again, you can new it up, and if you new it up the wrong way, I'll help you out, and I'll new it for you, and just return it. I make sure that the data you gave me is not undefined. Okay, so I make sure that I'm not going to get a bunch of errors down in here. Then I make a tasks array where I'm going to put all my tasks. So I say this.task is equal to an array, and I say this.task map is equal to an empty object. Why am I making a task map? Anyone know? I don't want to have to search for it anymore. I just want to have like define it, right? So that's exactly why I'm doing it. So in the DOM, I can bind to the tasks array, but for my purposes of searching for the task, I'll use this map. Does that make sense? Like in my code, when I'm like, remove it, I'll just find it by the ID and take it off. So anyway, then I extend any of the data you gave me for this task, like the name or who's the owner of this list or when it was created or who's got permission for it. I'll extend that data onto the task except for the tasks array. I'm not going to let you put tasks into the list. I'm going to put them in my way. Okay? So everything besides the tasks, I extend onto the list. And then for each task, I call this .add task. Okay? And this .add task does some stuff. Like I could have just here said, go ahead and push them in, right? But what if I start pushing things in like 4 different methods? Now all of a sudden I'm like, I don't even know how do things even get in here? I don't even know because I got 5 ways of putting things into the list. So I'm just going to call this .add task and pass it the tasks. We good? Okay. So this is what this .add task looks like. And keep in mind, all this code was in my controller, right? Because all this proofing I'm doing, I had that all in my controller already. So when you say add this task, I make sure it is an instance of the task. Otherwise, I return, like, if you're trying to throw JSON in as a task, I just go no. Like, you need to give me JSON. So I just return false. Then I say if it's already in the task map, if that ID is already in my map, then I don't want you to put it in. I just want you to extend all the data from this task onto the one that I've already got in my array. Why am I doing that? Does anyone know? Because I don't want it to repaint it in the DOM. I don't want to like get rid of the old one and put a new one in, and then Angular goes, oh, I got to repaint that one because you just took the one out for the one. So I'm just going to extend it on there. Does that make sense? Okay, so that's why I'm doing that. But then I say, okay, but if it's not already in the map, put it in the map and push it into the tasks. Okay, so keep in mind, all this code, I had this all in my controller before, right? The first time I wrote this, I was like, okay, well, if I wanted to add the task and do all this stuff, but it was peppered in my controller. Some of us were like wicked smart, put it in a service, but I'm saying we're going to put it in rich data models that know how to take care of themselves. I don't need a service for this stuff. Like, hey, take two objects and do like that's like it feels like a silly thing to do. I should be able to say, hey, task, you know what to do with this. Let's do it. So that's what we're doing here. Now, if I want to remove it, I say, hey, am I trying to remove a task? If it's not an instance of task, just return false. If it's not in the list, return false. Otherwise, remove it by ID. Can anyone tell why I'm removing by ID? No? I don't want to remove by reference because sometimes two different parts of my app got the same task from the server. So they're actually two different references of the same task. Does that make sense? So if I say, hey, are you this task? Even though the values are identical, it's going to say, no, he's not this task. That's a different task. Because it's a reference to a different spot in memory. So I'm going to say, go ahead and remove it by ID. So I say remove by ID.call. This is the context, and here's the task ID. And then I go through and I see if there's one in there with that ID, and I delete it from the map. I splice it out of the list of tasks, and I'm good to go. That makes sense? So all this logic was stuff that before, again, this was buried in my services, buried in my controllers. Some of us were copying and pasting it. You know you've done it. Don't say you didn't do it. He laughed because he's like, you're right, I did it. I did it before I came to this meeting today. So I've done it. Like we've all done it. Like I'm not finger wagging. Like it's okay. None of us are perfect. But now we're gonna do it different. And when I first learned about rich data models, I was like, dude, that's awesome. Why do I need them though? Like I still didn't get what the fetch you were like the guys on my team were talking about. Like, what do you mean rich data models? And they're like, well, you know those, and they had to they dumbed it way down so that I could get it. They're like, you know how you go to the server and get JSON sometimes? Like, yeah, dude, I do that. He's like, okay, those are models. He's like, yep, yeah, okay, let's call them models. For the sake of this argument, let's call them models. And he's like, yeah, okay, sometimes those should be smarter than they are. They shouldn't just be JSON. I was like, oh, really? I guess they'd already been talking to me for an hour when they came down, and my daughter's like, "Hey, Dad, seriously, it's a rich data model." But I'm like, after an hour and a half, I was like, "All right, fetch it, okay, I think I get it. I'm gonna go try it." And I tried it, and I was like, "Yeah, this is how you write it. I'm not gonna do services for this stuff anymore." And after you do it once or twice, you're going through your code, and you're like, "That's the model. Put that in the model." Stop telling these two things how to do their stuff. Teach them how to do it and let them put the method on them and let them do it from now on. And after you do it once or twice, it just starts to make sense. And the cool thing is that you've got these JavaScript classes that are in no way tied to Angular. So when you get down the road a little bit of a ways, you have this framework agnostic model system that doesn't really care what is driving it. It's like I'm still a task list whether you're Angular or not. I still know how to put things in me and then take me out of me. I still get all that stuff. So you kind of have this agnostic model library. Does that make sense? And so for me, that's the biggest gain, and that's why we're super excited about using them. And not that this ever works. It's super pie in the sky. But if you were on your server, you could still use this code as well. So that's another thing you could do with it. But anyway, so that's rich data models. Are there any questions about it? Yeah.
Where do you recommend not putting them into Angular, using the value or something like that? You can inject them into a service that will take the call. What do you?
So when you make the class, so right here I've made this task list class, right, and I've put stuff onto the prototype, so I have extra methods, right? So you need to wire that up as an Angular injectable. So somehow you got to get that in Angular, okay? So sometimes you're going to be like Angular.constant, and you're going to set it as a constant, which makes it injectable at that point. And then let's say you're in some service called task service, and it goes and gets tasks, okay? And you go to the server, and you're going to inject this class that we just made, this task class. And you're never going to give anyone who calls your methods ever again JSON. You're only going to give them instances of task objects. Okay? So if they ever say, is this an instance of task, it's going to say true because that you're never giving them JSON again. And when they're like, hey, go get the task lists, you're gonna return from your service task lists. And then they're never going to be able to get the raw task of JSON ever again. Like you've completely shielded them and disabled them from somehow like getting JSON objects out instead of rich data models out again. Does that make sense? So you kind of so when you go to the server, you do your AJAX, you do http.get, you get the task, and then in your .then for each, you new it up as a task. So you do like a map on the array, the JSON array, and on the map you just return a new task with the object. Then you've got an array of the objects, and you resolve the promise with that. That makes sense? And then now you've got, now no one can ever get to your plain data models again, you just have rich data models. So that's kind of how we've abstracted it. So, yeah. Anyway, yeah.
Speaking of like code reviews on the server, that's what I really want to do. You know, has anyone thought of taking just these JavaScript classes and on the server generating, say, like Mongo models or some kind of database models, and then on the client, and then using them on the client as well, or you making expressions out of it, or something like that. Is there anyone doing that, or if I did that, would I be like?
I don't know, dude. It'd be like world's greatest cup of coffee, right?
Store the model in one place on the server. You have a route to get it. Angular fetches it when it starts up, but then your server can also do things like generate a database model.
I've never done it. I'm sure someone's done it though. Like I'm sure someone asked that question on Stack Overflow, and there's like an answer. So I don't know. Good question. Yeah.
I did this with Node.
You did?
Yeah.
Okay. Similar idea, right? Yeah. So you could go Mongo, Node, and on the client too.
Yeah, we didn't think about that.
Yeah. But you could. Easy enough, right? Yeah. Good.
So you mentioned using acting constant to construct.
Not construct.
Well, to give you a
to put the class into the injector. Yeah.
Give you a place. Are you using Angular Factory too? I mean, maybe it's a little too much in Angular.
I think in some places we've done constants, in some places we've done factories. Yeah, it's all in the closure, whether you're doing factory or constant. That's all in Angular closure, so you're not leaking it out to the global. So that's all like a responsible way to do it. I don't really care. You do it whatever the way your team does it is how you would do it. If you use require.js, maybe you do it that way. I don't know. Up to you guys. Yeah.
So sometimes that could be the model thing. If an Angular thing, if you got in the past and it succeeded with this, you get negative hey, where do you like to do that?
Yeah, so that's a good question. Like, if you're going to save it to the server, that's a better question. Like, if you're like, hey, I need to save this thing, that's when you do need to put that in service. That's not something you. I mean, someone here might be like, dude, seems legit. Let your models call the server. Like, someone might think that. I don't think that. Yeah, you could do that. You could make your rich data model return a promise, and when it's done, you could do an AJAX call or something like that. You know what I'm saying? You could call your service and say, "Cool, update this on the server now." So, good question. Good comment. Anyone else? Yeah.
Why did you pull remove by ID out?
I didn't want to put it on the prototype. I don't know, because I'm finicky. I don't want to like let people here like remove it by ID. I wanted that to be just a method I can use in my class. So by putting the remove by ID in a closure, it's not accessible to anybody. It's only a method I can use because only my class has access to it. And I didn't put it on the prototype because I want them to call remove task and give me the task. I don't want them to call remove by ID. That makes sense? But if you're in your app and maybe your data is structured such that like you are passing around IDs of tasks instead of the tasks themselves, and if that's the case, maybe in your thing, you're like, dude, I'm putting remove by ID on the object as well. And maybe at that point, your remove task just calls remove by ID. Like it just says this dot remove by ID and passes the task ID. So, you know what I'm saying? Like it just would kind of call into the same method, but it's up to you. I just did it. I wasn't trying to like preach the gospel on that one. That was just I just did it on the fly because it made sense. It didn't make sense to give you the ID, like the option to do that. But again, if your data was structured that way, cool. Go ahead and put it on your model. Any other questions? Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Well, now you're like back on schedule, so if you wanted to like.
Am I really?
Yeah.
Killed it. Killed it. Does anyone want to talk about this thing? I really feel bad talking about it because Jeff wrote an article. Like I'm just gonna read his points.